Hello everybody, you're watching Pokemon Colosseum!
Only the best.
Only the best and brightest minds in the galaxy. Holy shit, we've spent our whole day watching fucking Steins Gate Zero.
Today's moved by painfully slow.
It feels...
It's lugged on.
It's like 5 p.m. and it feels like 3 days have passed today because we've watched like 11 episodes of Steins Gate Zero.
Oh no.
And every single one of them feels like an entire lifetime. Because somehow 1,000 things transpire and nothing happens in every episode. It's incredible. You'll hear my full thoughts on it later, I assure you. In possibly a multi-chapter epic of a video. But, how do you feel about Steins Gate Zero so far?
It's worse than I hoped. And I didn't have, like, any expectations going into it. I was like, yeah, the character designs look like shit. It's probably not...
Why are you way over there? You want to come...
Why am I over here?
Yeah.
I don't know. Because I'm sitting on the left side. I'm sorry. There it is. Somebody told me that there is a key somewhere in here, so I went in. I'm gonna let these guys out.
Shout out to whoever that was. It's actually, honestly, Steins Gate Zero, while awful, is better than I kind of expected, because my expectations have gotten real fucking low. Like, Fully Coolly Progressive was unbelievably awful. Like, Fully Coolly I gave a 1, and it was like suffering to watch that show. So with Steins Gate, even though it had like a much higher score on Mal, so I suspected it was probably just mediocre, part of me was expecting it to be like infuriating. And it is, well, it's more frustrating than infuriating, you know? I mean, it's pointless and has no reason to exist and sucks, but it's not infuriating the way that Fully Coolly was. What do you think? Do you think it's infuriating or more frustrating?
Okay, Fully Coolly was just like traumatizing.
Fully Coolly was like the
it was
worst.
I am blocking it out of my memory.
Like, divided from the context of being a huge fan of the original, like the Fully Coolly Progressive, again, taken on its own merits, of which there are none, was awful. Like, it was a painful experience, and I hope to never live it again. Even just, like, being reminded of it by my own video was, like, seeing the footage was just like, like, I can't believe it was real. Like, I want to believe it was a weird fever dream I had, you know?
It was real. It happened. They did that. How do I feel about Steins Gate Zero? It feels like a mediocre, like, seasonal anime.
Yeah, it feels very average. It just feels like a show. You know, it's funny because people have been memeing about the fact that, like, you know, I made Shinsekai Yori is worse than SAO, and then I made Fully Coolly, and I was like, oh my god, it's almost as bad as Shinsekai Yori, and everyone's like memeing, like, you know, is this Turtles all the way down? This is worse than that. Mass Effect Andromeda, somebody brought it up in the chat, like, do you think it's worse than Shinsekai Yori? And I said, it might be. It might be worse than Shinsekai Yori. But, like, what people have to appreciate is that, and I realize that this is an element of meta-narrative that maybe only I've really kept track of and needs to be explained again because it's 4 years old, but the whole point with the SAO video was that I gave it a 1 because it was the worst anime I had ever finished. The idea was never that it's the worst anime of all time. It was the worst anime I'd ever finished. Because most of the time when a show is bad, I won't finish it. And, like, I even say in the video that, like, SAO would have been, like, a 3 out of 10 if not for the parts that were really offensive, you know? Mm-hmm. But, like, the parts that are really offensive, you can kind of get over time a little bit compared to a show, like, even if some of it's offensive and that makes you want to give it a 1, you can still remember what positive qualities it had that made you give it a 3.
Our offense about SAO are not like unique to SAO.
No. So like with Shinsekai Yori, it was like there was nothing positive I had to say about it, you know, as compared to SAO. Where like SAO, I can imagine it being salvaged, and like I've defended some of the imagery of the show as being pretty good. I've defended like some of the concepts as being interesting. Shinsekai Yori is like, I understand why people think that it's conceptually interesting, but like if the setting doesn't work, all that goes out the window to me, you know? So yeah, and I mean, Fooly Cooly Progressive is, the only reason it's not as bad as Shinsekai Yori is that it's shorter. It's mercifully short. Shinsekai Yori was 26 episodes of pain, or however long, 24, I don't remember. But Fooly Cooly was just 6. But, I mean, like, in terms of what happens, it probably is even worse than Shinsekai Yori. Even less, like, justifiable.
I mean, I think Progressive is worse than Shinsekai Yori.
I think that's fair. I think that is a fair thing to say.
Interesting things about Shinsekai Yori.
Yeah.
The only interesting thing about Progressive is like the weird, like, dream sequences they do, where and they never talk about it or address it later. It's just like it happened once.
It's like, why wasn't the show about that?
It was just the edge factor.
It's really sad and disappointing and bad. But anyway, Steins Gate Zero is like, it's not atrocious, it just has nothing interesting about it. And like, it constantly makes me go like, why? You know? It's never like, I mean, there are some things that are like broken, like break the canon, but it's like, it's more that it makes you realize that Steins Gate was never a show about having like a super tight narrative per se. It was more that it was presented really tightly. That like, yeah, there's stuff that is probably plot holes and shit that like really strains your suspension of disbelief if you think about it. But the show is not designed for you to like really think about it that way. It's more of a thriller. It's more about the tone and the atmosphere and the characters.
If you're thinking about it too much, it's not doing its job.
Right. Steins Gate Zero is like, it takes the plot seriously, and therefore it's immediately apparent how retarded the plot is.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'll go on about that more in a future video.
You were really excited to do a Pokemon Let's Play because you were thinking about words.
The treachery of words.
Yeah.
I was explaining to you that, you know, there's this famous painting, The Treachery of Images, that's just a picture of a pipe, and it says, "Ce n'est un pipe," meaning this is not a pipe. Because a picture of a pipe is not literally a pipe. It's a picture of a pipe. And I was saying how I wanted to make a follow-up called The Treachery of Words, or The Treachery of Language, which would be Pipe nest un pipe. It's not a picture, it's just that sentence. Pipe nest un pipe. The word pipe is not a pipe. You know, it's just a word that represents this thing. And like, I mean, if you're multilingual, this is obvious, right? You can point at an object and you can give it 6 different names depending on what language you're speaking. So the object itself is not any of the things that you're calling it. Those are just words that you've made up to describe the thing. But it is just itself, you know? Like, and there's no way you can describe it in words that will be truthful to it.
That will change the fact that it's, yeah.
Like, there's a pizza box on the table right now, and I could say it's a pizza box, but like, divorced from the context that a pizza came in it, it's a cardboard structure. But even then, like, cardboard does not understand itself to be cardboard. The world does not understand it to be cardboard. Someone who doesn't speak English doesn't understand it to be a thing called cardboard. We may have a shared concept, but a lot of the times in other languages, there are multiple things that are grouped under a word that are separate in another language. Like, part of what makes English such a complex language is that we have more words for things than other languages tend to, where like, sometimes, for instance, I'm trying to think of a good example of this. I know someone will comment with one even if I don't. so maybe just look in the comments for one. But like, I'm fucking struggling. I know there's like an animal in Japan that like there's two different animals that are considered the same over there. Like they have the same, they call them the same thing. And over here, we call them two different things. Actually, better example, Ben was telling us at the state fair that like, it was like pumas and...
Okay, first of all, that was me.
Oh, it was you telling us. What was it? What were the three cats that are the same?
Mountains, cougars, and pumas are all the same species.
So they're literally the same animal.
Yeah.
Mountain lions, pumas, and what was the third one?
Cougars.
Cougars. Literally the same animal, but like they have three different names for it because it depends on the region you're in. Like different people discovered it and gave it different names. And even in the English language, even though people would have shared this, until it was understood and studied that they were different, you know, species, it wouldn't have been understood that they were the same fucking thing, you know? So, like, whereas in other countries, I'm sure that they are all under the same name. And, like, especially if you're from somewhere where they don't actually exist, they probably would not have even heard of them until that point that they had that name.
They wouldn't have heard of all three names. Like, they'd probably
Right.
just think that Puma was a shoe brand and not even a cat.
Right. So, like, so the thing about words is that I hate them, even though most of my life is dedicated to them. And I really want people to understand, when I talk about this, when I talk about words, I come at this from the perspective of that, like, I am a wordsmith. That is what I do. What I do is I talk and I write. That is the primary things I do. It's what I spend most of my time doing. I've been doing it for decades. It's been most of my life has been writing and speaking, using words to communicate. And it's always been out of frustration towards them. Because you don't necessarily understand the world through words. You might exercise your understanding through words, but that doesn't mean that everything you know verbally. And I think that most people are a lot more intelligent than they think, and they just don't know how to use words to express themselves. Like, when people talk about street smarts versus book smarts, that's a great example. Street smarts is when you know things about the world because you've experienced them, but you don't know how to explain them in a way that sounds academic, you know? But, like, they are the same kinds of understanding. And I think that people put so much emphasis on, like, academic learning because it's stuff that's been, like, tested and retested and then given words, and now we have words and we can communicate these ideas to one another. But I think that...
I mean, academia just kind of, like, brews in itself.
Yeah.
Like, it's self-perpetuating.
Indeed. But, like, I think that, like, when we fixate on what we have words for, we miss the forest for the trees on how much shit we don't have words for, that we haven't studied.
Yeah, you're missing a whole lot of information. You're, like, failing to understand that you don't have the full picture if you just get hung up in the words that already are in existence.
Exactly. And, like, the majority of concepts, I would say, are things we don't have words for. We have words for tangible things, obvious things, but, like, we don't have words for these mass-scale social constructs that we are in the process of studying and working our way towards words for, but it's an endless battle because the world is endlessly complex. There's just so much shit going on, and most of it we haven't yet studied, we don't yet understand, and we don't yet have words for. And so people get so fixated on the stuff we already have words for, but the thing is that even in that vast world of things we don't have words for, a ton of it is understood implicitly. And I think that the way that people understand the world is mostly through impression. It's through you collect data constantly through all of your senses, and based on how you interpret those senses and the patterns that you recognize in the world around you, and like what you experience, what you see, creates understandings. And I'm not saying that everyone necessarily is correct in what they understand, but I think that we get these impressions and then we attempt to explain them with words. And I think that most of the time that people say something that is wrong, it's not because they have the wrong idea or the wrong impression. It's because they are using the wrong words for their impression. And I think that, like, most of the time, people's impressions are based in reality. They're based in something true. But when they learn the wrong words and when they explain it wrong, that's what puts them on the wrong path. And then other people will hear those words and they take them at face value without ever having the impression. They only know the words. But the words are not nearly as important as the impression. Because hearing the words... Now, hearing the words can give you the impression, but they can also give you a different impression. Because the words are more fallible. They're not describing something real. They're just, like, they're ascribed to a concept of something. But, like, actually experience... This is why everybody says, like, you know, you can read about something, but when you experience it, it's completely different. Because reading about something will give you, like, a sense of what it is like, but when you actually experience it, you get the outright impression, and then your brain will come up with its own words to describe it, and they might not be the same as the words you read, and that's why it feels so different, is that you're like, oh shit, like, my interpretation of the impression comes out with different words. And this is why everyone should share their impression. Everyone should be always talking about, like, what did they experience, because that way we get a more nuanced portrayal of the impression. But they should also
recognize that that is only their impression, and other people can have other takeaways from the same experience.
Yeah, and especially because, like, I think that sometimes two people might have the same impression, but because they use different words to describe it, they come away with totally different understandings of it. And, like, even though what they're both getting at is the same thing, you know? It's like, sometimes something happens and we all get it, but because we use different words to describe it, we feel like it's different, you know? Yeah. And, like, this is why, like, for me as a writer, like, a big part of what I've been trying to do when I try to, like, simplify my scripts and, like, get down to the core elements, it's less about just making the language tighter and more about, like, getting closer to that core impression that, like, when you fixate on all the details and all the little stuff and all the nitpicks and stuff like that, then, like, those are the more, like, very personal aspects of something that might be more broadly understood. So, like, let's say that 5 people watch a show and they all come away with the impression that it sucks. But when they explain why it sucks, they all have different things to say.
And maybe somebody didn't, like, pay attention to a certain thing, or, like, doesn't, like, there's a hole in their understanding.
Right. But the core of it is that they all think it sucks.
Yeah.
And
so
at the
it
end
doesn't
of the
matter
day,
if, like,
at the end of the day, though, all 5 of them probably did experience all of the same things the other guys did. They just didn't have words for those things, you know? Mm-hmm. Like, sometimes I'll watch videos about something where, like, maybe I'll watch, like, a video about something I really liked, and they'll explain it in a way that I never thought of, but it's like, obviously that is part of why I liked it, you know? Like, obviously that had to do with it. I just didn't think about it and didn't have the words for it. So, like, my favorite line in my Fooly Cooly video is when I say that in the original show, what made it special was that every single shot in the entire show conveys an emotional meaning. And that's not something you would ever think about, but it's something everyone feels.
Yeah.
You know, like, if you like the show, and you can talk about how dynamic the artwork is, you can talk about all the stuff that stands out, all the tangible stuff, and, like, the times where it radically shifts art style, that's really obvious. But it's like, it's one of those things that once somebody does put it into words, it is suddenly very obvious. It's suddenly like, wow, now that you mention it, yeah, every image is well crafted in this show. I never thought of it that way, you know? Are you able to see the way you're sitting? Is this mic arm in the way?
I can see.
Okay. I just realized you were, like, looking straight through the mic arm at the television.
It's not blocking. It's, like, in the black space for me.
Okay. But yeah, like, so, I think that's the kind of thing where I kind of like cut to the like a deeper heart of the matter. And again, it's not even that everyone would think that, but I think that like it's one thing to talk about how the show has like great visuals in general, and like to talk about again like, you know, the scenes where it is really experimental, and like break down one of those, be like, this is why Fooly Cooly is cool. But I think that even the people who would do that will also agree with my statement, and that my statement is cutting closer to the heart of the matter, you know? And like there's probably a statement that could cut even closer, but it's like that purity of like finding what is the shared impression, like what is it that all of us saw that, you know, that like we're all just waiting for one guy to say perfectly, you know? But like, just because I said it doesn't mean that nobody else understood it. I think most people who love the show know this fact but they don't have words to say it, you know? And that's why people have always said like the number one response I have always gotten from my videos has always been like, you know how to put into words what I was thinking about this show. You know, it's like you took the way I feel and you explained it in such a way that now I can explain it to other people. But I feel like even though I'm good at that, and even though that's basically the core appeal of my work, I still feel like that's not enough, because like I'm proud of that, but I just want people to be more like, to just like listen to their impression. Like, you don't have to justify this shit with words. Justifying it with words makes it easier to communicate to somebody else.
Yeah, but it doesn't always mean you understand it better. Like, maybe you're somebody who doesn't think necessarily with eloquent speech.
Right.
You're still having those thoughts.
And
you're still having those like gut feelings.
Exactly. And I've become really obsessed with this line of thinking ever since the whole we had a thing where we got really into the UR2 video by CGP Grey. This idea that you have two brains.
Oh boy.
But the core point of the idea is simply that the part of your brain that has is you, essentially, that like has all of what you think about, is not the part that actually speaks. The part of your brain that manages speech basically interprets another part of your brain and translates it into words. So you don't understand things verbally. You don't understand things through words. You understand things in this other way that is then translated through words. But like, you can also use other modes of communication to try and represent that same thought. And some people use art, some people draw pictures because they have this impression and they don't know how to put it into words in a way that will convey the maximum amount of meaning, because the way that it feels in their brain is more visual. So they try to communicate it visually. And it's like, I feel as though people put so much emphasis on words because words are easier to understand and more clear. But like, you know, as they say, an image is worth 1,000 words, but really an image is worth an image. Like, you can write 1,000,000 words, you can write 10 words, you can write however fucking many words you want, because the image is the image. And like, words are words, and it's just two different mediums, and you can translate between them all fucking day, you know?
Yeah, so how does like poetry and like creative usages of words that most people wouldn't be able to understand on
I think that
merits.
is a more impressionistic use of words. Like, it's where you take words and you say, instead of using words to translate these impressions, I'm going to use them to, like, I'm going to try to get, like, to close the gap a bit, you know? Because, like, again, I think that, like, if I have if I have something I understand in my brain, like, and maybe it's a concept that like I want to explain to people, but I don't know the right words to explain it, I can just dump an endless amount of words, or I can write a poem, or I could write a song, like something that like, you know, abstractly explains the point.
Yeah.
But then like later go back and translate that even further into more words and clearer words, you know? And I feel like like, when I write lyrics, it's usually because it's about emotions that I don't feel I can express in a sentence, you know? Either because they are too emotional or that I want to be guarded about them, or because, like, I don't think I can explain it in a... God, so much of fiction writing and lyric writing is people just saying shit that is true, but, like, without having to justify themselves. And it makes me really, like, jealous and upset that because of the fact that the appeal of my work has always been that I'm so clear and direct, means that it's, like, if I make a video where I make a statement that I know is true, but I can't justify it well enough, then it's like, I'm going to be taken to task. Even though, literally, constantly, people are making those kinds of statements in other art forms and not being taken to task about it, you know?
Yeah.
Like, if I wrote a fictional story that's, for instance, let's say, like, my autism video, like... you know, a lot of people are going to be like, oh, this is not scientific and you don't know what you're talking about. If I just wrote a story that made the same point, people would not have any questions about it. Or if I wrote a song that made the same point, like, nobody would be on my ass, even though I wrote it for the same reason, because I know that the impression I'm trying to share is true. It's just that, you know, the words are not all there yet. But it's like, I think the people who are helped by that video and people who are like, oh man, now I finally get it, it's not because they think the words I'm saying are all correct. It's because I have created an impression in their mind that has allowed them to understand what they already knew, you know?
Yeah.
Because we all kind of know the same shit at the base, like, we're just all trying to, like, get to this same kind of general understanding that other people have. And it's like, if you talk to a bunch of people who are considered to be geniuses, they're all going to tell you the same thing, you know? Like, if you get 10 geniuses in a room, they're going to have a conversation that is, like, they're immediately going to know what each other are about. Or even to not talk about geniuses, but just, like, people in the same field. And it's not because they've necessarily done the same research. They just, like, okay, when we had Zen Huxtable over at the house, like, it is so... I've barely talked to that guy, right? Like, all I did was watch some of his videos, we left comments on each other's videos occasionally, maybe tweeted at each other once or twice, but then when I came to Boston... Then when you met
in person, it was like a long-lost friend.
Exactly. It's like there was no need to, like, explain myself. Like, I would just talk about some concept and he just got it. And it's not because we read the same book. It's not because we studied the same thing. We're not even using words the other person would have used. It's just that we have very similar impressions of what the world is like. And no matter what words we use, we both know what the other guy's talking about, you know? And that's why he'll say things like, if you listen to our podcast we did together, I'll explain something, he'll say, right, and then he'll say, like, a slightly different version of what I said, because that's his version of how he interprets the impression versus mine. By the way, this town is cool, and,
yeah, it's the underground, and there's, like, a organization of, like, kids who, are kind of like the resistance who you're talking to. And you gave them some
when it said it's
parts.
Trump and Hillary, I got really confused for a second.
Oh,
I forgot those were what you named them. Oh boy, the kids grid. I'm real into underground cities, as you may have heard.
The city's cool. It's like run by this like
tunnel in, 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 tunnel in. New type city that's kind of us. I started creating a universe.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna say anything more about it. I, funnily enough, have become a big fan of m.dotstrange without seeing any of his movies. I just love him, and I want to be him when I grow up. How do you feel?
I feel the same way. I think he's an idol.
m.dotstrange.
He's living the right way.
Is a 3D animator who Tom is a longtime fan of and has worked with in some ways. who made 3 full feature films by himself. You know, he had like voice actors and stuff, but he made the animation entirely by himself. And he's also made a bunch of video games and music. I didn't even know about his music till recently, and his music is great. I love his fucking music. But like most of what I've consumed from him is vlogs, because he also just sometimes makes these vlogs, usually just motivational speeches. I've talked about them here and there. They inspired me to leave Twitter, which has been a great decision. There has been no repercussions for leaving Twitter at all. And what I've heard of what's going on there in my absence has been hilariously completely irrelevant to me. Like, I leave Twitter and it's like all I'm hearing about is, oh, Bowsette is everywhere, and I'm like, couldn't possibly get less of a
perfect time.
Yeah.
There is nothing going on Twitter.
So I left Twitter. It's been great. I haven't missed it. Well, I missed it at first just because I wasn't used to not having the dopes. But, you know, I became my own dope dealer, as was advised by m.dotstrange. But, like, it's a strange feeling because, and this kind of ties into what I was just talking about, that m.dot never talks about anything I don't understand. Like, I've been an artist for a long time. Most of his vlogs are more like for people who are getting into art. They're not really like, here's advice for professionals. Oh, I killed a shadow Pokemon.
What am I doing?
Well.
Oh no!
What has to happen? Do we have to start over?
Yeah. I did save recently.
Okay, thank God. I was gonna say it's been like 30 minutes.
Oh my! There was a place to save in here. I was so focused on m.dotstrange I didn't even realize that there's a fucking shadow Pokemon. I forgot that Ladian was a shadow Pokemon.
Anyway. Oh Jesus! I've been fucking tanking through my 3rd mimosa as we do this.
I feel sick. I feel
That's
like
what happens when you drink too many mimosas in a row. That's why I was kind of asking if you wanted to mix it up, like drink some beers or some mixed drinks. Because orange juice, you can't drink that much orange juice. I know this because I've drank hella orange juice. Because mimosas are my favorite, and screwdrivers. I've probably had like 6 screwdrivers in a night before.
Damn. Every time people tell me they get drunk off screwdrivers, there's always like puking involved. Like if that's all they drank that night.
It is really hard for me to puke, so that's probably why I've been safe.
Also, like you're not binge drinking. You're having a couple drinks.
I mean, I just said I had 6 screwdrivers in a night.
I mean, yeah, that is binge drinking, but like having 3 isn't. It's a lot, but it's not binge drinking.
Anyhow, what was I talking? m.dot. Yeah, like, his videos are really aimed at, like, more newcomers, but it's the way that he phrases things is that he says things I already know, but he says them with this level of confidence and with a flippancy that can only come with being, like, older and wiser than I am, you know? It's like I have this weird need to justify myself, and I've been trying to get past it. Like, this is a big thing I've been trying to move past in my life, is this constant need to justify everything I say because I want the maximum number of people to agree with me or understand me. And it doesn't really work. Like, it maybe moves the margin a percentage, you know?
Yeah.
Like, generally, if you make a statement, let's say that 60% of the people who hear the statement agree, 40% disagree, and then you disambiguate it as far as you can, and now, like, 42% disagree, or 62% agree. You know, it's like, yeah, you've made progress, but it's not, what's the word? Diminishing returns. You know, like, how much effort am I putting into overextending myself, going more than halfway, trying to explain myself just to net those extra few people? And, like, I think I perceived it badly because I spent so much time on Twitter and Discord and places where, like, if one guy doesn't get it, then it feels like everybody doesn't get it. you know?
Yeah.
And it feels like you have to keep arguing just so that this guy gets it and anybody who might happen to think the same way.
And there's no end in sight.
There's never an end in sight. And, like, with M.Dot, he will just say the fucking thing. He'll just be like, this is the way it is. And it's like, I already knew that was the way it was, but when I say it, I have to write 7 paragraphs justifying myself. And this guy's just like, yeah, it's like this. And I'm like, fuck, it is like that.
It's like, this is like that.
Why am I not living my whole life around the fact that it's like that, you know? I realize I'm being vague, but if you watch some of his vlogs, his most recent one was called Getting Over Yourself with Coffee and Pie. And it's him and his wife. His wife's not in the video, but she's like off screen. And the fact that he's like a married man and that his wife, like, you know, clearly is always around, like, helps me to relate to him. Because, like, so many times you get like the lone wolf artist kind of thing, but this guy is like, I don't know, he reminds me more of myself than that, you know? As like a guy who built everything with his own hands, but he's like also like a low-key people person. Well, he hates most people, but he likes those people, like, you know, like the way I am is I hate almost everybody, but the couple of people who I like, I really like.
He's found his people. That's
Right.
the difference. There's a lot of people out there who just like have given up on finding their people and just think that they're alone and that their only like gratifying communication is gonna be online. But once you find those people offline, you can then go.
Alright, this is a very important thing I have to say to all of our young viewers. All of you who are young and who think you're never gonna find anybody you can relate to, never stop looking. Never stop looking, because it will be worth it if you find them. And if you die alone, whatever, you know, like, what, you're gonna die alone not looking or die alone looking? It's one or the other.
I mean, I spent most of my life just thinking that nobody would get me.
Yeah, same.
And I was just like, this is just how it's gonna be. I've accepted it.
I mean, I made it pretty far in that, like,
And it's miserable.
For me growing up, I had nobody. You know, like when I was 14, I had literally nobody who understood me at all. Eventually, I found people who kind of understood me, and like I cherished those people. Those were like my best friends in the whole world. And then I found people who understood me even better. And like those became my people. And then I kind of abandoned my old friends because I was like, well, these people get me even more. Then I found somebody who understood me perfectly. And I abandoned my previous friends still. So, like, never stop looking for someone who understands you perfectly, because you never know if there's an even more satisfying interaction.
I don't think it's fair to say that you abandoned those people.
No, I still talk to the PCP. I definitely abandoned my old friends.
I think it's like a two-way street. I don't think it's just like you abandoned your friends.
Sure.
I think a lot of it had to do with the fact that you moved and like your whole entire.
I mean, none of them made an effort to keep up with me either. So it's not like it's all my fault.
I don't think it's fair for you to say like, oh, I was the one who like killed all these relationships, when in fact it was just like, this is naturally how relationships of this sort.
This is the first time everyone's ever defended me on this, and I gotta say, thank you.
Like, I don't think you should feel guilty that like you leave your high school friends behind.
I don't necessarily feel guilty. I mean, like to frame myself as the bad guy, because I always do, and it comes back to bite me, because then people treat me like the bad guy.
Then people use that as justification for why they're mad at you.
Right.
Which is bogus.
Anyways,
like, your relationship with somebody should be based on your relationship with them.
Right.
Not what.
But like, if you're somebody who you don't yet have somebody who understands you, and that is something you crave, don't stop looking, because it will, if you find it, it will be extremely gratifying. And there's no reason to stop looking. There's literally no reason. Like, again, you can either die alone looking or die alone not looking. But like, on the off chance that that person exists, it'll be worth it, you know, to search as long as it takes.
And
not
even
that it's
when you
necessarily
find
easy
the
to
person,
search.
you shouldn't completely give up on everybody. Like, you can still find meaningful.
Sure, I haven't completely given up on everybody.
No, you haven't. So I don't think like you should frame it as such.
Yeah, alright, that's fair. I just tend to paint myself, you know,
I think
a villain and chillin', just ain't in the bag for a big bad. I gotta chase fat stacks and...
I think I paint myself as a people
stacks.
hater, even though it's, like, usually the opposite. It's usually, like...
Well, you're extremely nice to people, which is probably why you end up hating them even more. Because, like, you let people take so much from you.
I mean, it's more of, like, I'm just disappointed with myself for not being able to connect with the people I want to be able to connect with, and for overextending myself. But that's just kind of how it goes.
Human connections, what a mistake. Most of what I made only brought more pain.
People only create relationships on a self-serving basis. Nobody's gonna go out of their way to have a friendship with you if it doesn't benefit them in any way.
What if she comes and lets me in? What if that's how my life begins? What if he hits me on the chin? What if I never trust again? I've written a lot of songs about this subject, haven't I?
You have.
Sorry if it seems like I was cutting you off. I just wanted to sing.
No, you weren't cutting me off. Don't worry.
So anyways, yeah, it's always worth looking. Anyways, m.dotstrange, him and his wife were doing this video about, like, why you should not have stage fright, or, like, ways to get over it. Basically talking about how, like, you know, when you get wrapped up in your own head, it's like you project your insecurities onto the people who are in your audience who don't actually give a fuck. Like, most of them are just, they're thinking about something completely different from what you are. And, like, if you really want to entertain people, it's more about, like, losing yourself and just being there for them. Because it's like, if you want... There's a line that his wife says at one point that was really interesting to me, and it got me thinking, because she said, like, you know, if it's about you, then why not just do it in your room? And it got me thinking about how, like, the excuse I've always made is, well, I need to make money. You know, like, I want to do this career entirely for myself. I don't want to do it for other people, but I need money, so I have to do it for them. And the result of that is getting into this weird middle ground where it's like you're halfway selling out and halfway not. Mm-hmm. And the reality is that I don't think that that's a right way to approach anything. I think the way you should do it is to just do it for the people, but with the expectation that the people are there to see you. You know? Like, to see whatever you are going to come up with. Don't count on people having a limited taste. Don't count on people being not able to understand you. Don't count on them just missing the point. Because, again, people might talk about what they think they like, but nobody knows what they like. People, well, okay, I shouldn't say that. Nobody knows what they're going to like. People can describe what they already like, but nobody knows what they want, you know? And, like, because you know what you've seen before that you did like, and you know what you've seen before that you didn't like, and you can try to extrapolate from that what you want, but, like, when something new comes into existence that you didn't predict, then you have to form a judgment on it right then and there, and, you know, it might be that whatever you saw before is not helpful in determining that, you know? So, like...
And what you like is mainly, like, time-based, like, time and place-based.
Exactly. A lot of it has to do with what mood you're in, what kind of person you are in that moment. The number of... Okay, like, I feel as though maybe 30% of all of my viewers have told me this same story about how they were not into my videos at first. They watched one of them and thought, this guy seems like a pretentious douchebag. Then they came back much later and found that they loved my shit and watched all of it. And so it's like, so much of it is frame of mind. Like, even, like, a lot of those people will tell me what video they first saw and that they went back and watched it again and loved it. You know? Mm-hmm. Because, like, it's just about the impression. It's about what expectations they went in with, like, what they thought the video was until they really thought about it, you know? And it's just like, you can't control any of these factors. So when you make a video, don't go at it thinking, like, I have to make something people will love. Make it under the impression of, like, I'm going to make something that I want to make, and I'm going to make it so good that people will love it. And like, but if you have to keep in mind who the people are, you know? Like, if you just make it completely self-serving, you don't make it with the thought of the audience at all, it's not going to appeal to people because you're not thinking about, like, you're not thinking about what is appealing, you know? Like, I feel as though, and this is not a call-out or anything, and he knows I feel this way, but, like, I've told Jesse that, like, his titles and thumbnails are the biggest reason that a lot of his videos don't blow up. Because he'll always try to give them a clever and good title and thumbnail that, like, relates to the video. But for the most part, a lot of them are stuff you won't understand until you've watched it. It's like, it might just be some weird turn of phrase and image that when I see it for the first time, I don't know what it means. And then I watch the video, and then I think, oh, that was a genius title and thumbnail, and I remember it forever. But, like, until you've already seen the video, it doesn't make sense. And from his perspective, he already made the video, so of course he knows, and he's thought of the most clever title that reflects what the video is. But the average audience member doesn't know that. They just see a title and thumbnail, and they have no reason to click unless it invites them, you know? And, like, it's just kind of the reality of the medium, but you have to consider the medium. You have to consider what you're working in. And I feel like he's always been, because he hates YouTube and he hates YouTube culture, he's always been resistant to that because he's thinking of his content as, like, a complete package, like a movie. And I'm thinking of it as like, well, on YouTube, the title and thumbnail are not a part of the content. The title and thumbnail are an invitation to the content, you know? So you have to make the title and thumbnail something that catches people's attention. But once they're in, you just got to give them something good, you know? Because beyond that point, they're just interested in, like, being entertained. And, like, you can't lie to them with the title and thumbnail, because then they might... you know, they might hate the content just because it was a lie.
Yeah,
but like,
because at that point they'd be able to tell it was clickbait, and people
Right.
don't like to feel clickbaited.
No.
Because people want to feel like they're smart.
Exactly. And so, like, it's not about, like, giving them a fake title and thumbnail, but giving them one that entices them to watch, and then when they watch, they're entertained and they feel gratified for having clicked on it. And that's what's going to get people to pay attention to you. So, like, I think that's something I fixated on too much throughout my whole career, has always been like, I have to make a video about the most popular show, because if I don't, then nobody will watch it. But it was never like that, because as I've proven over the last year, sometimes if you give it the right title and thumbnail, people will watch something about a totally obscure anime. The great anime director who time forgot. Video about a guy who time forgot. Nobody cares about his movies. Nobody cares about the guy. Got 200,000 views because it has a good title and thumbnail. It's inviting. But then people stay for the content, you know? So, like, even, like, my Lane video, the writer who kept anime weird. Like, video got a ton of views. It's about Chiaki Kanaka, who not that many people know the name of, and most of his shows are obscure, you know?
Yeah.
But it's got a shitload of views because it's called The Writer Who Kept Anime Weird. Because I'm selling you on what is the appeal of this video. Is that I'm going to talk about a writer who you will want to know about, you know? You will care who this is by the end of this video. So, like, you know, I think that's all very important towards this. So, yeah, like, seeing her say that, it was interesting because I feel as though I've always had this mindset that I'm, like, at war with the audience. That, like, I have to make the stuff that I want to make, and then I make the stuff that they want to see, you know? But it doesn't need to be that way. It's like, I can do what I really want to do and just make it so the audience will care.
Yeah.
And, like, invite them. And I've gained more confidence in that lately because like, not only those videos, but like with those videos, I had more of a cynical thought process behind it, where it was like, I want to do a video about Mori Masaki, and I'm just gonna give it, like, you know, I'm gonna give it a title that, like, will get them suckers in. It was more like the thought process. But when I made The Unknown Tape, that was when it was legitimately, like, shocking and surprising how well people responded to it. Because my music historically got no attention. Back when I was Digi Brony, I was making, like, a bunch of my mixtapes and albums came out back then, you know, and no one gave a fuck about any of them. All the music I did, all that stuff, like, no one cared. But, like, most of it I only posted on Twitter. Most of it I advertised in very small ways. I didn't really embrace the idea that my audience would like it. I just kind of put it on side channels or on, you know, like, I was always trying to hide it because I was like, oh, most of my audience won't like this, so let me shelve it away over here in the dark and then cry about how nobody likes it, you know?
Yeah.
Cry about how it's not getting any attention when I'm not promoting it. When I'm, like, I'm expecting people to go out of their way to find this and then to like it, you know? But what I should have been doing is putting it right the fuck in people's faces, and some of them aren't gonna like it, but anybody who is, that's the only way they're gonna find it, is if you put it right in their fucking face.
Yeah, if you invite
you know?
them. Like,
So, like, with the Unknown tape, while I was making it, I was in the mindset of, like, this is gonna be my most obscure, most unknown, no one's gonna like this, no one's gonna care, it's way too weird, it's way too out there. But then, because it was in development for so long, eventually it was like, what if this had a full video? Like, because that would make it a more complete art piece. Like, I was thinking of it more of like, hey, you know, it would be really cool if it all had video, and it might make people understand some of the songs a little more, because they can feel, not even that the video component really has much to do with the song, other than just, like, reflecting the tone, or even sometimes just being a reference. Like, track 2, just the main sample in the song is someone's trap remix of the Fendrana Drifts song from Metroid Prime. So I just used the cutscene from Fendrana Drifts. Like, has nothing to do with the subject matter of the song, but it obviously reflects the tone because the original song was made for this location. So, like, you know, it communicates something, it enriches it a little bit, but, like, I put together this video, and then it wasn't until it was out, and it was like, it got views, and it got plays. People bought it. It costed $4.27, and it sold. Like, I want to say like 15 to 20 people have bought it, and that's, I didn't think anybody would buy it. And, like, there were comments on it that were like, this is my favorite expression from you in a while. And it's because, again, people don't understand things in words. You understand things in impressions. And that was what that album was about. That's why it doesn't have the lyrics released on the site. That's why I won't talk about what any of the songs mean. Because if you listen to it and it clicks with you, it means that you understand. You know? And it doesn't mean that you understand what I understand. It doesn't mean that you feel these feelings for the same reasons or in the same ways. Some of those songs are like literal responses to events in my life. Some of them are old songs. There's one song on there. I'll just give you this as a hint. You know, it'll be obvious what song I'm talking about. There's one song on there that was written and performed the day before my ex broke up with me, about how I thought that was about to happen. Like, one of the songs is basically me saying, like, you know, I really think this relationship is about to die, basically. And then it did. Like, the next day after I recorded that song. So, like, that's thrown on there. And, like, I saw some people kind of speculating about, like, what the song means. And it's just like, you know, but their speculations were interesting because some of them, one guy had interpreted it as being a song about, like, my career. And it's like, when I thought about the way he interpreted it, I was like, that also makes sense. Like, yeah. I get why you thought of it this way, but it's just because this is a complex emotion that can be applied to a lot of scenarios. And, you know, because the lyrics are not extremely direct, they're not literally about what's going on, they're just figuratively about what's going on, and there's multiple situations where that figurative feeling could apply to, you know? So, like, so it was extremely gratifying for people to tell me, like, hey, this abstract expression of yours really resonated with me. Like, I got something out of this. And, like, I don't know if anybody feels about the songs the way I feel about them, but the fact that people felt something at all and enjoyed it is enough. you know?
Yeah.
And I don't need them to know it in the same words I know it with, you know? It's like the fact that they got anything out of it is impressive.
It means something.
And it's because of that feeling that I've been sort of like desiring a focus to shift back into doing more like fiction and like abstract work, because I feel like I understand it better now. Like I feel like I understand why I would do it, you know, that like I was so obsessed with being understood perfectly, and now I'm realizing like I don't really care if people understand me in exact words. I want people to understand me as in they get the impression of what I'm thinking about, you know? Which is something that fiction is even better predisposed to, because I'm not interested in being an academic. I'm not interested in being like collegiate and using the exact right words. I'm interested in sharing my impressions, you know? I want people to see how I see the world. And when you do that in an analytical, explanatory way and you're not perfect, it comes under a lot more scrutiny than to do the same thing. Like, nobody writes a fucking piece about, leaves a comment on a Kendrick Lamar song about how, like, you know, his impression of the world is not exactly correct. Like, when he talks about how, you know why we crack babies because we born in the 80s, that ADHD crazy. Like, unpack that fucking statement. You know why we crack babies because we born in the 80s, he literally is saying that everyone born in the 80s is a crack baby because so many people were doing crack in the 80s, and that is why so many people have ADHD. That's what that song's about. That's what the whole album's about. So nobody's out, like, fucking Fantano's review of Section 80 was like, man, Kendrick really seems wise beyond his years. It's hard to believe like a 23-year-old is saying such like woke stuff. And I'm like, you mean stuff like we're all crack babies from being born in the 80s? Like, that sounds like madness, but you also get it. Like, it's not literally correct, but the impression of it makes sense. Like, yeah, there was a generation where a lot of drug use was happening, and the children of that generation have a higher count of mental issues, you know? Maybe there's a correlation. It's possible. Anyway, that was my rant about words.
Words don't mean shit.
Nope.
You're the one who extrapolates and provides meaning to the shitty words that you use.
Words don't mean
But you know they found a new
anything.
sense.
It's permanently night. What do you mean? Because there's like a lot of senses that are not like the traditional.
So they're saying that there's like a connection between your gut and your brain, and that it's like a new sense because the way that the neurons are transferred to like to
Listen
inform
to your gut.
brain. Yeah, they're basically saying that like they gave like a disease to animals, and they put like green dye in it to see where the connections would go, and they saw like it went from the gut to the brain first, and that the animals were able to like understand that they were infected with a disease with their gut.
We're just canonizing gut feeling.
Yeah.
What are we gonna call it? Gut feeling? I got a bad gut feeling about this gut feeling.
You know, I think they probably need to like do more research on this before they give a name to it, because I don't really know what kind of implications it will have. But they were saying that like diet pills and stuff don't really work, like appetite suppressants don't work because they're focused on the long-term like signals that you tell you that you're full, but there might be like instantaneous signals that like also do the same thing, so I guess that's what they're saying.
Well,
I thought
I've always listened to my gut, so this does not surprise me.
Listen to your gut when it's calling to you.
It's that song.
It's like listen to your heart.
Listen
By
to your
Cascada.
heart, listen to the beat, listen to the rhythm, the
Never
rhythm
heard
of the
Listen to
street.
Your Heart by Cascada.
I don't think so.
And she's like, listen to your heart when it's calling for you.
It's like rain.
It's
on your
basically the
wedding
same,
day.
but it's by a different person. Did I capture it?
Oh,
Did I win?
I was gonna say that if fucking...
Why is Signal Beam so good? Yeah, I did
if
capture
fucking
it.
gut feeling... Well, gut feeling deserves to be a sense. But after gut feeling gets its term, kinesthetics needs to also get recognized as a sense.
I think the more and more we get into VR and the more like research that is done in VR, there'll be like another sense to understand spatial relationships. For sure.
Yeah, we definitely have a sense of space. I mean, like, a lot of these are treated as senses in academia. They're just not, like, listed among the school teach senses, you know? Like, that's why in that kinesthetics video, Campster says, like, you know, oh, like, one of those other senses...
She trashed my entire team! How am I supposed to battle?
One of those other senses in addition to the traditional 5. Like, clearly there's... Who is calling my ass? I bet it's Texas.
You bet it's Texas?
It just... all red screen, suspected spam caller. Why even put it through? If it's a suspected spam caller, just auto-deny it. I hate my Google phone. Tom has offered to sell me his Samsung Galaxy S9 at a highly reduced rate, but like I can't justify the purchase because he's like selling it for like $400 and I don't need a phone. But I hate that phone.
What's the worst thing about that phone?
Battery life. The battery drains at all times. And I know that's always true, but it's like, on a Samsung phone, if you were to leave the screen off, it would last at least 2 days. This Google phone will just fucking die. It will just commit suicide. Like, it's always either I charged it today or it's dead when I pick it up. The other thing about the Samsung phones is that, like, when they get below that 15% threshold, they seem to, like, cling to life. Like, they will, my phone...
There's, like, a little bit of a warning. Like, you aren't actually at 15%. You're just at, like,
yeah, it's like your car's gas
it's
gauge.
Completely arbitrary.
Yeah. Like, I've had a lot of times where I picked up my phone at 15% and it lasted longer than the, like, entire rest of the bar, you know? Mm-hmm. The fucking Google phone, the other day we were at Walmart, I opened it up, it said 2%, I typed in a Google search and it fucking died right then. I was like, really? That was 2 whole % of your fucking battery? Was 10 seconds? I was so fucking pissed. I hate that phone. I also hate that it's tracking me at all times.
Yeah. How do you feel about that?
It sucks. I hate that it requires you to have some kind of, like, security. Like, you either have to do the dots or the fingerprint. I don't think you can have it have no security at all. And, like, I'm used to just click a button and my phone comes on, you know?
Whatever I'm doing is doing something on the other screen.
Oh, hold on. Fucking... How about now?
Yeah, now we're in business. This game makes me gay. There's the lady that I caught.
By the way, shout outs to commenters who are constantly fixing my life and going unacknowledged. Shout out to the guy who pointed out that when you have Steam open, it makes it so the controller controls the cursor, which is really retarded, but it made it so... Okay, so my computer has been like I thought my computer was like dying, but it was really just that, like, having a controller plugged in makes the whole thing fucking weird. And I'm still replacing a bunch of parts anyways because it's out of date as fuck and it's slow as shit, but like having a controller plugged into it makes it run weird and like ass. And also, like,
did I break the game by losing my battle?
What do you mean?
Because I can't fight those bitches again. Don't let me get out. Don't let me get out. Don't let me get out. I want to go back in. I want to go back in. Move, you fucking fat slut. I hate this game. Move.
No, you gotta get her out of there. Just get her out of there.
She'll battle. I don't want to fight this bitch again. She fights me every time.
Oh, she'll fight you just for, like, passing her?
Yeah, just for
even
passing
on the way
her.
up?
Yeah. I could, like,
Oh boy.
There we go. I did it. Oh my god. Maybe I have to go back down and like reinitiate the cutscene. I don't know.
Oh boy.
But because I lost that fight.
I mean, do you still have the shadow Pokemon?
I still have the shadow Pokemon, but I don't know if I can actually go anywhere.
That makes no fucking sense.
I literally think I broke the game.
What? How? How can that be the case?
Cause there is supposed to be like a 2-trainer battle right here, and you can't. They put Silva in here, and he's not in here.
So you lost.
You can see Silva's in there.
You lost, and the consequence of that is that the game just doesn't work anymore.
I don't think they like. I don't know where I'm supposed to go now because you're supposed to beat those two and then do something else, but I only beat one of them.
This can't be.
They should
facts.
have a key, right?
This can't be facts. Talk to everybody.
I talked to her, but she's like,
I guess that's.
oh no.
What about that guy on the roof of the shop?
I already talked to everybody.
What about these bitches who are just standing
I don't
around?
have any UFO discs,
What is a UFO disc?
so I can move.
Oh.
They're telling me to go by the elevator. I'm going by the elevator.
No, he was just talking about the elevator and how it's cool.
Where do? I'm gonna go back to the kids' grid.
I mean, when you lose a match, doesn't it usually send you back to a save point?
It did.
Oh.
But
So you just have to do whatever you did before?
no, because what I had to do before was fight those 2 trainers and get
Are they
Silva
not there
out.
anymore?
No.
That makes no well, what did you do before then to make them show up?
You go to the kids' grid. I already did that. You give them the thing, and now you go over here, and they're not there. I gotta pee.
Well, do you want to end this episode?
Sure.
Alright, that's it for this episode of Pokemon Colosseum. Please leave a comment explaining what the hell just happened.
I'm not saving, so I'll just fight them again.
Alright.